don't see is what they've overcome. All the struggles, the daily rejections, the heartaches, the betrayals, the rumors, the criticism, the empty bank account, and all those lonely nights while trying to make their vision a reality. You see, the only difference between the one who quits and the one who doesn't is that they showed up every day. They worked hard every day. They hustled every day. They learned from a proven mentor every day. They improved every day. They did all this even though they felt like quitting every day. And eventually, they became who they are today.
Well, good evening, everybody. If you can hear me clearly, please type Y. Make sure I am recording this and that my microphone is not skipping in and out on me. Fantastic. Welcome. This is our Saturday Night Live training, and this actually is the first one we've done in maybe a month. We've had a lot of things taking place over the last couple of weeks and haven't been able to get together, but I wanted to have a special training tonight simply because we just came back from Dallas, Texas last week, and we attended the pro event with Eric Worre. And what's funny is I was going through my history of videos, and the last train I did on this topic of Know Your Story was actually the last time I came back from the Eric Worre event in Vegas last year. And I've got to get better at focusing on this topic because this topic is huge, huge. I'll give you an example. Every single successful person in network marketing, without fail, there's not one that does not have a story. Now, everybody, phrase that, does not have one that doesn't share their story. Because everybody, and I mean a story, but only a small few actually share it. And in network marketing, this is a people business. This is a business about relating. This is a business about connecting. And the best way to connect with people is tell stories. And you think back when you were a kid, when I was a kid, my mom and grandma watched, daytime soap opera, her stories. And say, I got to watch my stories today. And my mom would record them. And when she got home from work, she'd watch her stories. It's, General Hospital, One Life to Live, all those kind of stuff. Boring as hell to me, but it was their stories. People love to hear about somebody else's drama because it makes them human. What turns us off is constantly hearing about somebody's success. Up to a certain point. But hearing about their pain, hearing about where they came from, that at one point they were just like us, is what fascinates us. And the people that make the most money in network marketing are the people who are able to tell their stories the best. Also, the people who have gone through the most obstacle pain. The Olympics, and I remember the first Olympics I ever was in 1984. They were in Los Angeles. And that during that time, I remember this like it was yesterday. In the gymnastics was Mary Lou Retton, and she got her perfect 10. And I remember every Olympian went up. You know what NBC did? They went on a 5 to 10 minute promo about the person's background, about that person's story, where they came from, their neighborhood, the school they went to, the problems they had to overcome, the challenges. Every single athlete in the Olympics, watching the next Olympics happen, they do that. When you watch American Idol or Dancing with the Stars or Who's Got America, whatever, They always talk about that person's background. It gives you an emotional bond to that person. You kind of pick out your favorite based on their background. It's no different here. After 17 years, I still remember when I first joined this industry. My old mentors, I remember their stories more than I remember. Because when you go home at night after seeing a presentation, you don't remember what was said. You remember how you feel. How a person makes you feel. If you've ever been on the dating circuit, if you ever like an individual, you can spend hours with an individual and not really recall what was really said, but what you recall is how you feel about that person. And that feeling is a memory that can last a lifetime. Does this person make me smile? Does this person make me feel good when I'm around them? It's an emotion. Same in network marketing. Music. Let's look at country music. Doesn't country music tell a story? An emotional, that's why it's so popular. Songs that can tell stories, movies that tell stories. I love when George Lucas says all the time, Star Wars is not about spaceships and lightsabers. Star Wars is a drama that expands through multiple generations. That's what Star Wars is all about. All the other stuff is distraction. It's filter. Can you tell a good story? So saying all of that, what is your story? Have you even thought of your story? Have you developed your story? You have one. You may sit there and think, I don't have a story. Yes, you do. If you're still alive right now, God, you have a story that has allowed you to make it this far. It scares, but at the same time, I feel blessed that I'm making it to 40. And I've got 40 years worth of stories that need to be shared. So, what's your story? Now, even though you can hear this, when we were in Dallas and we were in a room with over 1,000 people, and this wasn't just 1,000 basic networkers. These were pros. These were people who understand the value of spending extra time and money on personal development, not for their company. The event was for personal development, to learn more, to become a professional, to hear from other 6 and 7 figure earners. If you're willing to spend time and money on that, you're serious about what you're doing. You're in a league of your own. In the end, network marketing won't do it. They're still struggling with their monthly auto ship of their company. They don't understand the value of spending time and money on their personal development. So this is the elite of the elite. And 90% of the room might be higher, struggled sharing their story. See, I know Darren Washington was in that room with me. I don't see anybody else that's on this webinar that was there. But they showed sharing their story. And that is the basic. That is the first thing you've got to get good at doing. Not mastering your comp plan or the products or the company history. It's being able to relate to another person by sharing what you've been through and why you're here. Your story. I listened to Susan Sly live last year, and she said it. You don't need to have to be an expert. You just need a story. Give you a couple of examples of stories. The first big story I heard was of my first mentor, Sam Oram. And he was about 10 years older than me. So when I was 22, 21, 22, he was 31, 30. Meeting in Atlanta and him pulling out a check for $12,000. And my eyes nearly bugged. And then I realized that was for the month, that was for the week. That was just a weekly bonus. It didn't even It wasn't even part of his monthly residual check. I was blown away. What I was more impressed with his story. Here's a gentleman who his parents worked literally day and night to save enough money to send him to school. And he ended up going to medical school to become a doctor. He was one semester away from completing his doctorate when he dropped out and quit. And he dropped out and quit because he said, this really wasn't my passion. I was doing it because my family wanted me to do it, and that's what I was taught to be successful. Helping people in another way. Still had the desire to help people. And didn't have success when he first got started. But when he did, he said his goal was to be able to retire his mother. So he got a limo, pulled up to his mom's job. She worked as a seamstress. And because of her job, the same thing for over 20 years, she had, I don't know, I guess it's called carpal tunnel or whatever, with your hands and your feet and doing the same thing over repeatedly. And she was always in pain. And he walked into the job with some balloons and walked his mother off of that job, and he recorded it on video, and he played that video for us of him off the job, and she's never worked a job since. And that was over 20, no, maybe 18, 19 years ago when he did this. Her name is Velma Davis. I have her as a Facebook friend. So if you can go on my friends, you can take a look at her. Walked his mom off the job. Now that's a story. He didn't want his mom working anymore. Another story was his upline sponsor, a guy named Montrell Jackson, who at the time was married with like 8 kids living in Alabama, was laid off from his job, and the part-time jobs they had was not enough money to support the family. So he moved to Atlanta by himself, not with his family, because there were more opportunities in Atlanta than at home, and the money he would make he would send back home. And he moved in with Sam. And he remembers when he was in his apartment with his family that he was on the second story, and his kids used to always, run around, jump up and down, and play. And the people below would take a broom and would hit the ceiling because his kids were making too much noise, and the kids would keep stomping even louder. That when the bills come up in the air, whichever one he caught is the one he'd pay for that month. Ended up becoming a millionaire because of network marketing. He made a decision. He didn't want to live that lifestyle. He wanted something better. One more story. Steve Carter. He was also in that same company. Millionaire today. But he was in his company for a year and a half and had no traction, no success. Never got promoted. Out of Chicago. Got to a point where he was way behind on his bills and his rent. And when they came to evict him, he was hiding underneath the windowsill, being as quiet as a mouse. And he literally said that, quiet as a mouse, so that nobody would hear that he was in there. And when they left, he said, never again. He made a decision. 8 months later, he hit regional vice president with the company, found the love of his wife, Asha Oliver. They got married. The rest is history. Till this day, that was 17 years ago, I remember their stories like the back of my hand, yet I could not even recall doing the presentations that they used to give. And I used to do the presentations. I couldn't do it today, but I that's what people are going to remember about you. Your story is what's going to have a lasting, long-lasting impact on their lives. Not because you're phenomenal, but because you were willing to share a vulnerability. And it's something that everybody has. We're all humans. Nobody's immune to it. And in the process, you found a solution to your pain. And if you found a solution to your pain, maybe your solution could become their solution. And that's a topic for another training, which is called Feel, Felt, Found. So that's another training. But right now, I want to focus on the story. And you can have multiple stories. When I first joined network marketing, my story in 1999 is not the same as today. I have a different story today. So your story can develop over. You want to develop at least a generic 2 to 5 minute story that you open your mouth. Every time you meet somebody, you're telling your story. When you get good at this, you find yourself, when you meet somebody, can I tell you my story? I love to share my story with you. I want to share with you my pain. And you'd be surprised how easy it is. At the beginning, especially for men, it's hard for men to really do this because we don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to share any weakness that we had in our life. So it's against our nature. But when men are able, it's even more powerful. It's easier for women to do so. But for them to share feelings, that's a taboo. But you overcome that in this industry, you will be successful at anything you do because you're going to be able to attract people to you in anything that you do. So getting back to this, where 90% of the people could not effectively share their story, which is why I now see why it's so rare that those who effectively can are the ones that have success. It's the common denominator. So we're going to go over tonight some of the basics on how to follow start to learn about your story. This is actual written, a picture taken at the event that Eric Worre broke down on the big screen. We took a picture of it. Your story built into 4 parts. You tell your story, your background, number 1. Number 2, you didn't like it, what you didn't like. Number 3, your solution. And 4, how you feel about it. So I'll give you an example of the story I tell. And I tell this so often that some of you have what I say memorized. You could say my story with me because I have it so down packed. I say it the exact same way every time. I don't need to do so. That's my 2-minute. I close you in the business based on my intro and my close. Everything in between is filler. You're not going to remember everything in between. You're going to remember my story and you're going to remember how I close. And some of you can do it word for word. So I'm going to tell you my generic story. Ready for this? Every time I open my mouth. Hey, listen, my background's not much different from yours. I was taught that if I want to have financial freedom in America, there's a couple of things that I must do. That's go to school, get good grades, and get a good, safe, secure job, a job that will take care of me for the rest of my life. That's exactly what I did. I graduated from Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. I went on to have a nice corporate career going, but due to no fault of my own, I was laid off from my job. Not once, but twice. And if you've ever been laid off, you know exactly how that feels. If you haven't, I guarantee you know somebody who has, and chances are you're putting in more time, more hours, more effort, and you better not even ask for a raise because you're lucky to have a job in the first place. But let's talk about those lucky few. The federal government states that 97% of all Americans will retire broke depending on family, government, and friends by the age of 65. 9 to 10,000 baby boomers retiring a day, a trend that's going to continue for the next 10 years. So I don't need to convince you that the economy is not doing so well right now. You see it in your day-to-day life. But what I am here to share with you is because I found another. I made a decision that I wanted to get involved in something that's going to give me I got involved in a plan B called a home-based business, the network marketing industry. And as a result, I put my head down, worked hard, and was able to walk off my job and retire by the age of 36 years old. Now, every single day is a Friday. And I drop them off at school. I pick them up when it's over. No daycare. The only way I know what is if my kids go to school or if they're home on Saturday. That's why I know my day. And if I can do what I know anybody else can do, one decision away. That is my network marketing pitch. That's my story. It will be the same story no matter what business I am doing. That's my story. Let's get a little bit more personal. Let's say I am not doing a presentation. That's how I do every presentation. and I'm connecting with somebody one-on-one. Here's how my story would go. You know, I was raised up like the Huxtables. My father was very, very successful. You know, he was taught that he had to go to school, and that's exactly what he did. He came from Compton, California, one of the worst neighborhoods in America, and he made something of himself. And he wanted his sons to follow in his footsteps. So we did. And I went to school. I went to most of my life. I don't really know what it is not to have. My parents did a very good job providing for us. But that was a short-term dream because I realized after I graduated from school that the same opportunities that were available for my father were not there for me. I saw it with my friends. I saw my friends graduate in complete debt, getting jobs working for people who had a GED while they had a college degree. I found that we were iced out of the marketplace. We hit economic recession in America, and that my generation to have a worse life what's the word for that, quality of life than our parents' generation. But I tried to stick it out because that's what I was told to do. Got a job, got laid off. And you know what it's like to come home early and your wife looks at you like, why are you here? I have to tell her that I got laid off and I have kids, and I look myself in the mirror and say, where did I go wrong? I got the degree. Now I'm still paying student loans on. I did everything that I'm supposed to do. What am I supposed to do? Go be a criminal and get locked up? What alternative do I have? And I hated that feeling. It's like getting the gut. Fortunately, a friend of mine shared with me a way that I can extra money outside of the traditional 9 to 5 job. And I'm not talking about doing drugs, I'm talking about legally by getting started in my home-based business. I was skeptical at first, but I saw other people were doing it and were having success. So I tried it, and guess what? I failed. I failed, but I kept at it. Said it's got to work. What's the alternative? Retire at the age of 65 with nothing, or worse, continuing to work till I'm 75 because I can't afford to retire? I kept at it. Next thing I knew, I was a six-figure earner. I was making more money on my part-time job or part-time business than everybody that I knew that was working a full-time job, that were fighting for a 2% raise every 2 to 3 years. That's another story to tell. My story isn't so much painful. Some of you guys have stories that makes me embarrassed to open my mouth. Like, I don't know what pain is compared to what some of you have been through. And your stories are more impactful than mine if you shared it. So here's how you go about getting your story together. Talk about your background. Where do you come from? Who are you? Where are you from? What are your values? Talk about what you didn't like about your current situation. What was hurting? What was the painful situation? What was the rat race? Number 3, you talk about your solution. What's the solution to your pain, the solution to problem? And then 4, you're going to talk about how you now feel about your future now that you have a solution. Because most people who don't have a solution, how do they feel about their future? You ask, where do you see us 5 years from now? Exactly where you are today or worse off? Do you see yourself better 5 years from now? Most people don't. That's why they don't daydream anymore. That's why they don't think about the future. Because they don't think they have a future to think about. They try to live for the moment. That you have a solution, you start to daydream about your future. The only time you daydream about your future is if you go buy a lottery ticket and you imagine yourself winning. That's when you daydream. Wow, if I win, I'm going to buy this house. I'm going to take this trip. I'm going to buy that car. I'm going to eliminate all my debt. That's when you start daydreaming about your future. You feel good about your future. How do you feel about your future right now? Now that you have a solution, you may not be there yet, but you feel good about your future. Share that. Here's another interesting question that was asked by Eric Roy in the group. Out of step 1, 2, 3, and 4, which one do you think is the most important? You know what most people said is the most important? Number 3. And second most was number 4. Most important. And when he said that, he said, okay, let's do another exercise. And we did an exercise where we had to pick out somebody in the audience we don't know and tell our story to them. He said, I want you to tell your story now, but only do steps 3 and 4. That was the most difficult thing to do, ironically. He said the most important steps, part of these 4 steps is number 2. Your pain, that's the most important. That's what's going to close people in your business and to work with you. The stronger your pain, the more impactful your story. They don't care about how much money you're making right now. Where do you come from? So your assignment, what I'm going to do is I only have 3 more minutes left. I'm going to play a video because I actually did a training on this a couple of months back. I think it was December. It was like 15 minutes long. I'm going to play that video. I'm going to go a little bit more detail on what I'm talking about. I just wanted to show you guys. You get on our team call tomorrow. I'm going to ask for some volunteers to share your story. I have another story too that most of you have never heard before. Motivates me. When I get promoted to the big position on stage, I'll share my story. That story. Story that can put a tear to your eye. I do have some pain. This wasn't growing up. But get good at telling your story. Record yourself sharing your story. Whether it's audio or video, listen to your own story back over and over again. The more you say it, the easier it is to come out. A lot of people struggle at, just even getting started to share. They don't know where to begin. So we're going to work on this so that you can be storytellers. It's not about the details. I had one person that was telling me their story, and they've gotten so much details, it was putting me to sleep. I don't care about those details. What's your pain? Show me your pain. That's what I want to see. So let me pull up this video. Tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, we're going to be doing our team call, and we're going to talk about your story. And I want to ask some volunteers to share your story. You only have 2 to 3 minutes to tell me your story. Now, I don't need a 30-minute TV show. 2 to 3 minutes to share your story. And then you get good. You learn other people's stories. You share other people's stories. So that's part of the feel, felt, found method. So thank you guys for joining us tonight. I hope this was helpful information for you. Let me play this video. This is recorded, and I'll get it in everybody's hands once it's uploaded. God bless. Have a good evening. Bye-bye. Hello, this is Brandon Ivey, and I am a professional network marketer. And it's very interesting saying that because this month I celebrate my 17th year in the network marketing industry. And I wasn't always a professional. I didn't start out that way. In fact, nobody starts out that way as a professional, but it is up to each and every single one of us to treat this industry like a profession, to learn the skills necessary that's going to allow you to have unlimited amount of success. And I failed for a long time in the industry, and when I say by fail, meaning I didn't reach a situation where I was making a whole lot of money. But during those years, I also learned everything that I know today. I learned during those years, and those are very, very important that you don't miss out on that. That even though you may be struggling, that the skills that you're learning is going to set you free in the future. You can't quit too early. And one of the skills that I learned to master was the ability to tell your story. And I have to admit, after all these years, it comes second nature to me that I don't think about it. And because so, I don't actually train on this skill set. And it is a skill set, even though it's it may seem, second nature. It's your story. How's telling your story a skill? Why is it even important? And I was reminded of this at the GoPro event with Eric Worre this past October in Las Vegas. A woman named Susan Sly got on the stage and she talked about telling your story. See, everybody is always trying to become an expert. And there's nothing wrong with that. You want to be an expert at what you do. But becoming an expert is not what makes you a professional. You can be a professional and not fully an expert at what you're doing. It's more in how you do what you're doing. There are certain things that you have control over and certain things that you do not. See, in our industry, it is all about building a team and an organization and a sales force. But since this is the people business and the people industry, we cannot control other people. We cannot control when, where, or how they do what they do. All we can do is show them the way, show them the path, and the select few, because most will not do it, but the select few will. And that's who you spend most of your time on. So the ultimate question is, how do I find that select few? How do they become attracted to me? And it is all in telling your story. I wanted to slap myself for kind of, not weighing heavily on this. And it is one of the most important secrets of success in network marketing. People sign up with people and not businesses. The best way to be able to enroll new business partners is for you to be able to actually care about the new people that's going to be joining your team. The ability to relate, the ability to connect. And when I learned to master this skill, it took me from broke to 5 figures a month in this industry. So this is a skill definitely that you must master, and it is also the one you have the most control over. It doesn't matter if you become the best presenter in the world, if you know about your product and services better than anybody else. None of that matters. What is your story? Tell me your story. And what I'm going to do for this video is I'm going to share with you actually 3 stories that has allowed me to become a 5-figure earner in this industry, and a bonus story that I learned when you don't have a story of your own. Now, as you grow in this industry, things in your life changes. You have new experiences, you have new responsibilities. But when I first got started at 21 years old, I didn't know anything. I was like a baby. I had just been able to legal age of drinking, just voted for president for the first time, just leaving my parents' house, just in school. So when they told me, "What's your story?" I was like, what do you mean, what's my story? Like, why are you here? Why did you choose this industry? What do you want this industry to do for you? And the common thing is, I want to make more money. Okay, why? What's your story? And when I think back 17 years ago, I did have a story back then that's not the same story as it is today. So I'm going to share with you guys 3 stories. But the first, I'm going to share what I do share today. I share this story every time I open my mouth and I talk about business. It's in every one of my videos, all of my presentations, and the story goes like this. I was taught that if I want to have financial freedom in America, there's a couple of things that I must do. That's go to school, get good grades, and get a good, safe, secure job. A job that will take care of me for the rest of my life. And that's exactly what I did. I graduated from Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. I went on to have a nice corporate career going, but due to no fault of my own, I was laid off from my job, not once, but twice. And if you've been laid off on your job before, you know exactly how that feels. And if you haven't, I guarantee you know somebody who has. And chances are you're putting in more time, more hours, more effort. And you better not even ask for a raise because you're lucky to have a job in the first place. And let's talk about those lucky few. The federal government states that 97% of all Americans will retire broke, depending on family, government, and friends by the age of 65. 97%.
We have 10,000 baby boomers that's going to retire a day, a trend that's going to continue for the next 10 years. So I don't need to convince you that the economy is not doing so well right now. You see it in your day-to-day lives. But let's look at those lucky few. If you're lucky enough not to get laid off, not to lose your job, then 97% of you that even do retire, the federal government says you're going to have no Social Security, no pension, no savings. Your house is a liability and not an asset. Social Security is a joke. And you can't even become a Walmart greeter anymore because most companies are moving to e-commerce and not even hiring people anymore. So I knew I had to make a decision. And I made the decision to really put my head down in network marketing, work hard at it, no matter what. And I was able to walk off my job and retire by the age of 36 years old. And if I can do it, so can you. But it's all about finding the right vehicle that you can be passionate about. All right, that's the story that I tell every time I open my mouth. But here's the story that I told when I first got started in network marketing. And the story went like this. You know, I joined network marketing because I grew up in a family that was kind of like the Huxtables. My father and mother worked very hard. My dad was very successful. You know, I never grew up for want. We've always had nice houses. We've had nice neighborhoods we lived in. I went to the best schools. I've been in private school since 3rd grade, almost my entire life, including high school and college. I've been in private schools. Always had the best, never really needed for a want. I remember there have been some weeks where we only had $20 to make it through the week, but we never went hungry. If we had to go to grandma's house and eat a couple of nights, that's what we did. And to me, it was just like I had a chance to play with my cousins. I didn't know we were eating over there because we couldn't afford food. But I always had clothes. I never went hungry. I was never cold. I was always clean and taken care of. But the one thing that I didn't like was that my dad was working so hard that he wasn't able to spend that much time with us, with me and my brother. There's sometimes he might have missed some of our games, missed some of the things that he worked as hard as he could to make it to every event he possibly could. But I also saw the pain and struggle on his face when he would come home. That he was working for a company that used to have a hiring policy of not hiring minorities. That he would have to work 2 to 3 times harder than his fellow employees just to get the same recognition if he ever got recognized for how hard he was working. And I saw him do this to provide for what we have now. And I said, you know, when I get older, I want a better way. I want to find a different way than what my father had to go through when I have a family. And just a couple of months ago, my senior year at Morehouse College, I got hired at a company called Kraft, where they were going to move me down to Augusta, Georgia. And when I went to Augusta, Georgia, the job was already laid out, about $28,000 a year starting out for me. Pretty good for a college kid just getting out of school in 1998. But here's what happened 2 months before I graduated. The entire division and the person who hired me was laid off at Kraft. So I experienced my first layoff before I stepped foot in the office. So I was definitely open to hearing about another way, but another life event happened to me as well, because the summer before I had the opportunity to have an internship with Congressman Jose Serrano from the Bronx in Washington, D.C. And one of those days I had lunch with a congressman named Patrick Kennedy. You might have heard of him. Ted Kennedy's son. You know, JFK's nephew. And I was with him and Congressman J.C. Watts. And sitting at that table, you know, we were just talking about the future. And there was a couple of other interns there. And I'm 21 years old. And they asked me, you know, what do you want to do when you're finished with all this? I said, well, I want to become a lawyer and, you know, maybe one day run for Congress and try to make a difference in politics. I was very involved in politics at the time. And he said, great. So is your family wealthy? I said, no. Does your family have access to wealth, independent wealth? No. He says, okay, well, you're going to have a little problem. You're going to have to figure out how to get wealth behind you. He said, because when you're finished with this, you're going to graduate from college in debt, which means you got to go get a job. And while you're getting a job, then you're trying to study for law school and go through all of that stuff. You know, you're not going to have the time to make the necessary acquaintances and and networks to get you into the political sphere the way you may want it to be. If I were you, this is what I would do. Where are you from? I said, I'm from Los Angeles. He said, great, this is what you want to do. There's over 13 million people in Southern California. Go back home and find a business or find something that's going to have 50,000 people give you $1 every single month. 50,000 people give you $1. If you succeed at that, with $50,000 a month coming in, you don't need a job. You can fund anything that you want to do. You can make donations to the right organizations and get inroads into the political atmosphere. Make the connections that you need. And then he went on talking about something else, and if you ask him now, he won't ever remember that conversation and has no idea how much of an impact it's had on me. So I was open and ready when network marketing was presented to me, and I jumped on board because I want to be financially free in 10 years. That was my story when I was 21 years old. My story has evolved and changed since then. So that's 2 stories that I've told you so far. The story I say today, the story I had when I first got started, but there's another story that has happened that motivates me, that I share every now and then, really when I get promoted. And here's how this story goes. See, when I was involved in network marketing, I understood that this was the future for me, but I wasn't making enough money yet to be able to take care of myself. So I had to go and get a job. I had a family, I had kids. But due to no fault of my own, I was laid off from my job, not once but twice. And I quickly realized that I need to make this work. So the last time when I was on a job, and I was in a situation where in the network marketing company I was a part of, had disagreements with the CEO and the direction of the company, and he terminated me. And I lost 2 months worth of income. At the same time, I got a pink slip on my job. And that pink slip said that within the next 4 to 5 months, it's a possibility that you may lose your job, so you can either take the risk or you can relocate now up to San Jose, California. I had no desire to relocate my family up to San Jose. So I now have to play Russian roulette, basically. It's 50-50 chance if I keep moving forward, do I keep my job or not? I already wasn't making enough money to begin with. Now I'm faced with losing that job, and I already lost my network marketing income. My wife wasn't working at the time. My back was against the wall. I had to make something work. And I got involved with the company, put my head down, and went to work. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't care. I didn't take no for an answer. 90 days later, I was at $12,000 a month and rising. I was able to walk off my job before they fired me or laid me off and retire at the age of 36 years old. Now every day is a Friday. I wake up when I'm finished sleeping. I'm able to attend all of my kids' events that I wished that my father was able to do for me. It's nothing like having time and freedom. See, most people have time but don't have money. Or they have money but don't have time. How about being able to have both? And that's what the industry of network marketing has provided for me. There you go. That's 3 stories that I have mastered at sharing. The problem that most people have is that they never share their story. And if you don't share your story, then people can never connect with you. People never know that you're real. They think that you're a paid company spokeshole. They don't know that you're a living person that understands struggle. They can't relate with you. And you may say to yourself, I don't have a story. I don't know what to say. I'm still working on that. Great. You know what you do? Is you use somebody else's story. Here's a story that I use all the time because I know that it relates to a lot of people. When I was on my job, I took a vacation, took my family down to Florida, and we went to Disney World for the very first time. Now, being from Los Angeles, we've been a part of Disneyland before, but never a part of Disney World. And it was an exciting trip for us. We were very excited. We saved up all year for this trip. And while I was on this trip, I got a phone call from a coworker. And she said that they are calling people off vacation into the office. I'm just giving you a heads up. I don't know if they've called you yet. And I said, no, they haven't called me. But they called one of my good friends into the office off of his vacation. And they said, you know, because of the economy right now, this is around 2007, 2008, we're going to have to let you go. We're going to have to fire you. Now, he's been on that job for 16, 17 years. He was a professional salesman. That's all he's done all his life. Now he's faced at Christmas time by getting laid off from his job. How many people have ever been laid off right before Christmas? The worst thing about it is this. He can't go somewhere else to get a job because all of our competitors were laying off all of their sales force. So what's he going to do with his family? Go back to school? He can't go back to school because that's not an immediate safety valve. He's not going to be able to earn money immediately doing that. He can't get another job in anything else because that's his only profession. And what ended up happening 3 months later, he had a stroke. And he's laying in the hospital bed, and his wife comes in the room and she tells him that his medical coverage expired a week before he had the stroke. So now he's laying up in the hospital bed, no job, wife doesn't work, taking care of his family, mother-in-law moved in with him, no medical, and he has a health issue. How do you move forward? And that story scared the hell out of me. And that's something that everybody has either gone through or they know somebody who has. Tell somebody else's story if you don't have one of your own. See, when I first joined network marketing, the mentors I had at the time always talked about their story. 17 years later, even though I spent all the time mastering the products, mastering the compensation plan, mastering a presentation, if you asked me to do a presentation on that company right now, I'd fail. Yet I remember every single one of their stories. I remember Montrell Jackson's story. He has like 7 or 8 kids, was living in Alabama, couldn't afford to take care of his family, had to move himself to Atlanta in a room with Sam Orem and leave his family in Alabama just because that's where the job was, and he would send money back home. I remember the story of him needing to pay all his bills, and he couldn't pay for them. He would throw all the bills up, whichever one he got caught, that's the bill that got paid. I remember Sam Orem's story, where Sam was in a situation where he was in medical school. He was a doctor, and he walked away from being a doctor to do network marketing because he realized that, yeah, he would have made a lot of money, but he didn't have a lot of time, and he didn't have a lot of passion in what he was doing. And he wanted to walk his mother off her job, who worked as a seamstress for over 20 years. And doing the same thing over and over again, she was having the carpal tunnel syndrome or issues with her hands and her feet. And he pulled up to her job in a limo, walked her off her job, and she's never worked a day since. He was able to take care of his mother. Or Steve Carter, who at one point did join a network marketing company and went a year and a half and didn't make any money, was dead broke, and had an eviction notice at his house. And when they came to evict him, he had turned off all the lights and everything and was hiding underneath the window in a bathroom, trying to be as quiet as a mouse because he didn't want them to know he was there. And he said to himself, never again do I want to feel this way. And he put his head down and went to work, and 8 months later, he at the top position of the company. I remember those stories 17 years ago, but I don't remember the company's compensation plan or products. Stories is what's going to build your business. Master sharing your story. You don't have to be an expert. You just need a story. Because with your story, your why has more impact in the business that you're doing. Without your story, you're just speaking generic. And I'm going to end this video by playing a video that's going to hit that point home. When you know your why you're doing, the impact has more value. My name is Brandon Ivey, professional network marketer. Bye-bye.
So you're a musical director. Cool.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro could sing. You know what I'm saying? All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Right now I'm found, was blind, but now I see.
So here's the thing. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time I asked him to sing, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what has more impact because you're walking in or toward